Oh my god!
That's some cheeks to that.
We just dodged death!
Make a scene of Sandra will be gone, and then I am sure you will weep.
Y'all gonna be screaming like sissies, watch.
The towering Ferris wheel draws crowds with its charm, and eager riders climb aboard it. But once it begins to turn, the unsettling sway of the seat cabin starts to stir some unease. The person filming suddenly goes quiet. Something disturbing is happening inside one of the cabins. Her hands is trembling as the wheel keeps spinning, and it's showing no sign of stopping at all. Eager for fun, the kids line up with wide eyes, watching the ride operator's every move. A new adventure is about to begin, and they can hardly wait.
Segura forte, hein, preta?
Eu tava na fila, deixa eu pegar.
Their excitement turns to shrieks of joy as the ride starts to speed up. The thrill of it all just steals their breath away, but their screams break free, raw and intense, as if sensing the danger beneath the fun. Slingshot and catapult rides have soared in popularity among thrill seekers, and it's a little bit easy to understand why. I would honestly try some of these, but after seeing this video, maybe not. These adrenaline pumping attractions strap riders into a steel capsule suspended between two towering structures. We have heavy duty spring cables anchored to the tops of the towers. They are slowly pulled tight as the capsule waits at the base. And then, with the press of a button, all that stored tension and energy is unleashed. In an instant, the capsule is launched skyward like a stone from a slingshot, sometimes reaching heights of 450 feet and speeds close to 100 miles per hour. I would not put myself in that. This is a high-octane experience that sends screams into the sky and sometimes phones flying from the hands filming below. But while the ride may look like harmless fun from the ground, at least to some people, it does exert up to 5 G's of force, enough to knock some of the riders unconscious mid-flight. Unfortunately though, fainting is far from the worst thing that can happen on one of these rides. In 2015, a man named Drew Larson was filming his 13-year-old son, preparing to ride the Mount Olympus catapult in Wisconsin with a family friend. I may have to visit Wisconsin to see because all these rides seem to come from here. See, this ride was built to launch passengers 200 feet into the air at 60 miles per hour. But just seconds before liftoff, disaster nearly struck.
D-Man, drop a beat! Holy shit! Oh my god. Oh my god.
Good thing it didn't rain on that.
Holy ball.
And without warning, one of the main support cables snapped. See, the cable, which was under immense pressure, had whipped free and slammed into the area, just inches from where the boys sat strapped into the capsule. Considering these rides operate with up to 40 tons of tension in their cables, it's honestly terrifying to think what would have happened to the boy if that shit had been slightly off center a bit. It would have been a disaster. Incredibly though, no one was injured. But the near miss exposed some serious issues with this ride. Though it had reportedly passed the state inspection only a month earlier, Mount Olympus had failed to provide proper maintenance records for the catapult just 2 years prior in 2013. And looking at the frayed cables and the photos taken afterward, yeah, it was clear something had been overlooked here. Some shortcuts were being taken. And you just can't mess around with that, especially if you're a ride operator. You can get charged, possibly jail time, for that lack of oversight. The catapult ride was shut down and removed from the park only 2 days later. A decision that almost certainly spared them and spared future riders from a far worse fate. This fair ride turns gently in the night sky. Its multicolored lights has a sort of mesmerizing glow. Spectators watch in awe and riders are smiling. But in an instant, a violent drop shatters this moment. People start screaming out of nowhere, disrupting any peace and fun that anyone was having that night.
Y'all gonna be screaming like sissies, watch.
What's up? What's up? Man, down.
Oh! Oh my god!
That's some jig to that.
We just dodged death!
Beaming with excitement, the men wave and laugh, cheered on by the person filming. But this joy is short-lived, and just as the operator starts to ride, a sudden, unexpected tear just stops everything in a chilling silence.
Callie! Callie, hug! Oh my god!
That's some jinxing action.
And call it luck or a miracle, but for the first time in ages, these men are living freely, only to discover just how fragile that feeling can be.
Dodged death! We just dodged it! Did y'all see that? Girl shredded. Right as they were about to take off, you guys. Look at that. Oh!
It's closing all of a sudden.
And sharing this with us.
You see, visitors at this theme park glanced upward, their faces just filled with fear at this alarming scene above, silently praying that rescue will arrive in time. They get a bit of hope as the giant wheel begins its slow descent, with this girl just hanging in midair. And fortunately for her, they managed to get her down. Man, it's videos like these why I don't really ride roller coasters anymore.
Coitada! Ai, que dor!
I need to go back to shore.
Chief, I already talked to dispatch.
Let's go. Let's go. The boat that came up
Tonight, Cedar Point says one of its most popular roller coasters will remain shut down after a horrific accident sends a woman to the hospital.
This is the video we showed you earlier this week of a woman screaming in pain after a piece of metal from the top thrill dragster hit her in the head. That woman remains hospitalized. Tonight, Cedar Point releasing a statement saying its investigation of the accident goes on, but also that the Top Thrill Dragster will not reopen this season.
The Top Thrill Dragster, located at Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio, was once the tallest and fastest roller coaster in the world, reaching speeds of 120 miles per hour and soaring 400 feet into the air. With such extreme stats, you'd expect any danger to come from the ride itself. But in the summer of 2021, the real tragedy happened to someone who wasn't even on the ride. See, while the coaster was running at full speed and the line was packed with excited visitors, a piece of metal, roughly the size of a fist, happened to break loose from the ride. Shit shot through the air and struck a woman standing in line directly in the back of her head. She collapsed immediately, triggering mass panic as people ran in fear that more debris might come flying off. Later on, investigators determined that the bolts were meant to secure the metal piece and that they had failed, turning it into a dangerous projectile. The woman suffered a skull fracture and, according to a lawsuit filed against Cedar Point, was left permanently disabled as a result. Man, I already know what this reminds a lot of people of. Final Destination.
A popular attraction at a Wisconsin amusement park is closed and under investigation after a 12-year-old girl was seriously injured Friday. She was on what the park calls its terminal velocity ride. She was wearing a special harness, then dropped straight down into a safety net, and that was supposed to catch her and break her fall, but the net wasn't high enough. The girl fell at least 40 feet and hit the ground. She was airlifted to the hospital.
This next entry, it's not your typical roller coaster. It's a high-risk stunt attraction known as Terminal Velocity, located at Extreme World in Wisconsin. See, unlike traditional rides, Terminal Velocity hoisted riders 100 feet into the air and then released them into a 52 miles per hour freefall, relying on a large safety net suspended above the ground to catch them. Well, in August 2010, a 12-year-old girl from Florida saw the attraction on TV and managed to convince her parents to take her there during a family vacation. And although the ride required participants to be at least 13, her parents signed a consent form to let her try it. But the tragedy that followed had nothing to do with her age. During her turn, the little girl was released from 100 feet in the air, but the safety net meant to catch her had not been raised. Instead, it was just lying uselessly on the ground. She plummeted at full speed and slammed into the concrete below, instantly knocked unconscious. Blood began pouring from the little girl's ears and nose, and her father initially believed she had died on impact. She was rushed to the hospital and managed to survive, thank goodness. Her injuries were extensive though, a skull fracture and 10 fractured vertebrae. She faced a long and painful road to recovery, requiring years of physical therapy. And the ride operator, who failed to activate the safety net, was later charged with first-degree reckless injury. I mean, it was an entirely preventable tragedy if the man just put the net up, if he just did his job. And because of that, this little girl almost lost her life. No one knows if it's just a bad day or an omen in the forecast. But for those trapped high above, the line between thrill and survival has blurred. The ones above are caught in a nightmare they never saw coming. Dark clouds rolled in, promising a brutal storm. Suspended high above the ground, the riders can only watch in horror as lightning cracks and winds howl. Every thrill they have was now replaced by fear. In Northeast Oklahoma City stands an amusement park with a ride known as the Silver Bullet, a coaster infamous for its intensity. But that day, it took a terrifying turn, catching the children off guard. But eventually, one by one, 5 brave firefighters stepped up to the challenge, battling height and fear in a rescue mission that seems to defy gravity itself. I don't know what I would do if I was in that predicament. It's a thrill ride designed for the brave, and the participants climbed aboard without hesitation. But as it begins, this ride flirts dangerously with the edge of safety. They grip the restraints tighter as the ride gains speed. But even that offers little to no comfort. And you see, panic has set in for one rider. They felt something was wrong. The ride eventually reaches a critical tipping point, one that threatens to spiral completely out of control. The crowd below, they gasped as the massive Ferris wheel suddenly dips in an ominous lurch. And with no security in sight, bystanders rush forward, desperate to help however they can. Working together with urgency, they manage the unthinkable. The wheel becomes steadied, and at last, the official rescue effort begins. The Son of Beast was once a record-breaking wooden roller coaster located at Kings Island in Mason, Ohio. At its peak, it was the tallest and fastest wooden coaster in the world, towering at 218 feet and hitting speeds of up to 80 miles per hour. And despite these impressive stats, the ride's lifespan was surprisingly short. Actually, maybe not that surprising, lasting only about 9 years due to a series of structural issues and safety concerns.
Secrets concerning the Son of Beast. I mean, you hate to think it might have happened, but did Kings Island hide the truth about the roller coaster's safety?
Well, an engineer who inspected the ride says yes, and he's now telling his story tonight. Here says John London.
I do. The state investigator who examined the Son of Beast says Kings Island put riders at risk. In a video deposition, Rick Schmizzy dissected photos of the wooden coaster and structural weak points right down to the loose bolts.
I could have spun it with my finger.
It was that loose?
It was that loose. And this is not the failure location. This is another location.
From the start, riders reported discomfort from the ride's intense bumps, but those minor complaints quickly turned serious. See, in 2001, 2 separate riders suffered broken necks within just 4 weeks of each other. While both individuals did have pre-existing medical conditions that made them a bit more vulnerable, the incidents raised some serious red flags. Then, in 2006, the ride made headlines again when part of the track collapsed mid-ride. The impact caused the train to drop 5 inches out of nowhere, bringing that shit to a complete stop. A total of 27 riders were injured. Every one of them required hospital care, and all but 2 had to stay overnight. Though none of the injuries were fatal, the event further damaged the ride's reputation. And finally, in 2009, after a woman reported a severe head injury from the ride, the park launched an investigation. Soon after, Kings Island made a decision to permanently shut down and demolish the Son of Beast. The trouble coaster was eventually replaced, closing the chapter on one of the most notorious rides in theme park history. Man, I swear this ride, the Son of Beast, has to be what Final Destination 3 was based off of. Thrill passengers cheer as they ride the worm, a beloved attraction zipping along the winding track. It takes a wide turn, drawing excitement and laughter, until it rounds the next bend. this next turn, it proves a little bit too sharp, completely jolting the ride violently. Panic sets in as passengers clutch their seats, fearing that something has gone terribly wrong, perhaps even beyond repair.
Roller coaster changes at Universal Orlando.
For the second time in 2 weeks, a guest has been injured on Dragon Challenge in Islands of Adventure.
The ride is part of the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, the park's most popular attraction. Tonight, Universal acknowledges it's made a key change in how that ride operates.
So this one was originally known as Dueling Dragons and later rebranded as Dragon Challenge. This iconic roller coaster at Universal Studios, located within the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, had offered thrill seekers quite a unique experience. The ride featured 2 intertwined tracks, themed after 2 legendary dragons, the Chinese Fireball and the Hungarian Horntail. Riders could choose their dragon, and the 2 coasters were launched simultaneously, weaving and racing past each other at speeds of 55 miles per hour, coming within just 18 inches of one another. While the concept of this was thrilling, shit turned out to be dangerously flawed, man. In 2011, a man riding one of the coasters was hit in the eye by a flying object as the trains passed each other. The injury was devastating. He had to have the whole eye removed. Even more heartbreaking, the man was already blind in his other eye, leaving him completely blind after this incident. You can't make this shit up. And just 2 weeks later, a second rider was struck in the head and leg at the same spot on the track. Both incidents happened during the synchronized, near-missed moments of the ride. And as a result of this, Universal made a major change. The coasters would no longer duel each other. Only one train would run at a time, removing the iconic near-collision moments that made this ride so visually spectacular. A disappointing change, especially for the fans, since Universal had posted multiple warnings and signs about securing loose items. But sadly, even with precautions, the ride's greatest thrill became its greatest liability. It literally took a man's eye out.
He was injured by something that struck him in the face and on his foot. Earlier, on July 31st, Carlos Montalvo was struck in the right eye, leaving him mostly blind. From Universal, quote, "As we continue to study these incidents, we will operate both coasters."
Take a look at these pictures coming up. 10 lives left hanging literally by a thread. Really serious story, this, with an extreme thrill ride on a rocket-like attraction. Almost ended up in tragedy. These are the latest pictures through to us here. Visitors to one of St. Petersburg's amusement parks were in for a nasty shock as a cable snapped on the ride, leaving them suspended in midair 70 meters above the ground. Luckily, rescue teams did make it to the spot just in time to free the stranded passengers, literally hanging upside down there. Such a close call. It isn't the first safety scare at this amusement park either. It seems 2 years ago, a 12-year-old girl suffered serious injuries after a trampoline accident, again, ironically, that time involving also a snapped cable.
The Russian city of St. Petersburg is world famous for its breathtaking architecture and its rich history. But beyond the museums and cathedrals lies a surprise for thrill seekers: the Divo Ostrov Amusement Park. Nestled in the heart of the Petrogradsky district, and at the heart of this adrenaline playground, looms a monstrous machine called the Rocket. See, this towering ride straps 10 brave people into a gondola at ground level, which is connected to a massive rotating arm by 2 heavy-duty cables, one at the front and one at the rear. Once locked in, the arm slowly lifts the gondola into the sky before swinging it around at dizzying heights of up to 200 feet. But the thrill doesn't end there. See, as the arm spins, the gondola rotates on its own axis, flipping the passengers upside down and simulating the disorienting chaos of spaceflight. Just watching it is enough to make my head spin, but not nearly as much as what happened in 2010. The rocket became a terrifying experience when one of its support cables snapped mid-flight, leaving all 10 riders hanging helplessly in the air. Rescue crews rushed to the scene, taking over an hour to safely bring everyone down. Miraculously, no injuries were reported, and later on an investigator suggested that unusually hot weather may have compromised the integrity of the cable's metal, causing that shit to fail. But that raises a serious concern. Wouldn't that have been known already, and shouldn't outdoor rides be built to withstand extreme temperatures in the first place? And despite the close call, the ride was only temporarily closed for repairs and reopened later on that same year, because in Russia, it seems even the rides and amusement parks there completely test your bravery. Marketed as a thrilling ride that was meant to deliver heart-pounding excitement, the Treetop Twister roller coaster at Lightwater Valley in North Yorkshire became the site of not one, but 2 horrific accidents that forever changed the lives of multiple families. It was a warm and sunny Wednesday afternoon, sometime in June, when 2 close friends from Durham University arrived at the amusement park to celebrate the end of their second academic year. Among them was 20-year-old Gemma Savage, a bright biomedical sciences student who was eagerly awaiting her exam results the following day. But sadly, Gemma would never leave this park alive. The Treetop Twister, which first opened to the public in May 2001, was promoted as a high-intensity, white-knuckle experience. The 49-foot-tall ride combined the mechanics of a traditional roller coaster with the spinning motion of a waltzer, a type of ride also known as a spinning or wild mouse coaster. Each car could hold 4 passengers and was designed to rotate along the track like a carousel, adding an unpredictable element of spin to the ride. Now, what began as a routine day of fun and celebration was soon turned into a tragedy that ended up casting a long and dark shadow over this park and raised serious questions about the safety and maintenance of amusement rides. You see, during the trip, the Treetop Twister reached speeds of up to 30 miles per hour, and Gemma's boyfriend, Joseph Shimon, later testified at an inquest that neither of them felt concerned about the ride beforehand. With a height restriction of only 3 feet 7 inches, it didn't really appear particularly dangerous. However, partway through the ride, their carriage abruptly stopped. Staff instructed them to remain seated, and moments later, their car resumed movement. But what followed was a catastrophic failure. See, as their carriage began accelerating down a U-shaped bend, they noticed another car directly ahead. Joseph immediately sensed something was wrong. Their vehicle ended up slamming into the one in front of them, with the impact sending them backward into another car behind them. All of this happening at high speeds. Joseph suffered whiplash and back injuries from the second collision, and briefly lost consciousness. When he woke up, he noticed Gemma's head slumped and heard her making snoring-like sounds. Initially, he believed she was merely unconscious, but tragically, her injuries were far more severe. It appears she had sustained critical head and neck trauma and was later pronounced dead at Lee's General Infirmary. 3 teenage boys involved in the same crash were also injured, suffering whiplash, a broken arm, and in one case, stomach trauma. 3 years later, in 2004, An inquest was held to determine what the hell went wrong, and Gamma's family had hoped for a verdict of unlawful killing, which would suggest criminal negligence in some way, but instead the court ruled her death as one of misadventure, which is apparently a legal term in English law that denotes an accidental death resulting from a risk willingly undertaken, a ruling that left her grieving family devastated and without the justice they had sought. So in English law, a verdict of misadventure refers to a death that occurs as a result of risk voluntarily taken. During the inquest into Gemma Savage's death, the jury learned that the fatal collision occurred while engineer Eric Butters was attempting to manually lower some of the ride's cars. These cars had been automatically stopped by the coaster's computer system as a safety measure. Unlike traditional roller coasters, the Treetop Twister had no onboard braking mechanisms. Instead, its track was divided into multiple block sections, each controlled by a central computer system. And this system was designed to allow only one car to occupy each section at a time, to help prevent collisions like this one. But in this instance, the safety system was compromised, and rather than activating the emergency stop, which would have shut down the ride entirely, the engineer reportedly bypassed it, attempting to regain control manually. Critically, so both the computer system and the engineer were issuing commands at the same damn time, which led to conflicting inputs and, ultimately, this collision. By design, the manual override should not have functioned unless the emergency stop had been activated. But apparently, due to faulty wiring, the override worked anyways. This major flaw went undetected during testing by the coaster's manufacturer, Revercon, its installers, and even an independent safety inspection body. At the inquest, amusement ride engineer John Madden from the Health and Safety Executive revealed a troubling chain of events. His investigation uncovered a series of human errors and mechanical faults, all of which contributed to the catastrophic failure that led to the tragic accident on the Treetop Twister. The French designers of the Treetop Twister, Revercon Industries SA, they were held accountable for their role in the tragedy and fined 175,000 euros for failing to ensure the ride's safe design and construction. Unlike Water Valley Attractions, the park's operators, they were also penalized, facing combined fines and legal costs totaling 110,000 euros for various safety violations. Additionally, electrician Eric Butters was fined 3,000 euros by Leeds Crown Court after pleading guilty to breaches of health and safety regulations. And despite the tragic incident, the ride was renamed the Twister shortly afterward, and the shit continued to operate. And unfortunately, this would not be the last time the ride made headlines. See, on Friday, May 31st, 2019, nearly 2 decades after the first fatal accident, emergency services were once again called to Lightwater Valley. A 7-year-old boy visiting the park with his family for a half-term outing fell approximately 15 feet from the Twister ride. What began as a joyful day quickly turned into a nightmare, man. The boy had been riding with his mother when he reportedly slipped out of the lap bar restraint and was thrown over the top of the seat. The incident occurred just as the carriage approached the souvenir photo point. Riders are typically secured with a single lap bar, but witnesses noted that the child appeared to be unrestrained, which is definitely the fault of the ride operator. Eyewitness Mark Charlie, who was also at the park with his own family, recalled the horrifying moment. He saw the young boy hanging backward out of the car as his mother screamed in panic.
I just looked up for the carriages. It was about 15 foot off the floor, and there was a guy, the lad was hanging backwards outside of the actual carriage. Somehow he got out of the actual restraint and was hanging out backwards from the carriage, his head kind of backwards.
I looked up at the carriages. They were about 15 feet off the ground, recalled eyewitness Mark Charlie. There was a boy hanging backward outside one of the cars. Somehow, he had managed to slip out of the restraints. See, Charlie described the terrifying scene. The child's upper body was dangling backward from the carriage, his head tilted downward, as if he had lost control, When I looked again, Charlie said, the 7-year-old was just hanging there. And then he suddenly fell, face first, straight to the ground from a height of around 15 feet.
Everybody started shouting, trying to get attention of the actual guy running the machine, but he didn't actually see what happened. He eventually did notice and stopped the machine altogether, and that's when the guys who were with me jumped over the barrier to see how the lad was.
Jean Philo didn't wait for the ride to stop. He rushed to the child's aid the moment he saw the fall. Ignoring the danger, he leapt over the fence and crossed the active tracks while the coaster was still running. And what he found was deeply unsettling. Philo described the horrifying scene, recalling how this young boy just laid motionless, with severe facial injuries that he says he'll never forget. He stayed by the child's side for over an hour, offering comfort and support. His own son even helped guide the air ambulance to land safely by assisting paramedics on the ground. And when the emergency crews arrived, the boy was conscious and responsive. He was airlifted to Lee's General Infirmary, where his condition was later reported as life-threatening. Y'all be safe out here this summer.